Hi, this is the painting portion of the Neurographic Art project. And what you have to do first is finish all your neurographic lines, all your shapes, and then make sure before you start with the watercolor pencils that you've got all your intersections done with these neurons. Okay, so every time a line crosses another, whether it's crossing another line or crossing into a shape, everywhere there's two lines crossing each other, you have to add one of these neurons. So make sure before you start with the colored pencils that you have done every single one of those connection points. Okay. On this example right here, you can see I've already done most of it. There's just a few sections that still need to get done in these two corners. And it's already been all activated with water, so there's no just dry plain watercolor pencils. Everything's been activated. But now I'll show you how to add the dry medium and then to add the water on top. Okay, so my color scheme is a tetradic color scheme. So that's the second thing you have to do after you're finished with all your neurographic lines and making all the connections with Sharpie. You choose your color scheme and you write it down on your manila paper. So I wrote down tetradic color scheme. My four colors are yellow, green, blue, green, red, purple, which is kind of the same thing as magenta, and red, orange. Okay, so those are my four tetradic color scheme colors. And even though I only chose four colors, remember I'm using 9 colored pencils because you can make different variations of the colors that you choose. So look, this is yellow green and this is yellow green, but see how this one's more yellow than this one? So that I did by mixing colors together. So this yellow green is just the plain yellow green colored pencil. And then with this one, I used the yellow green colored pencil and added yellow on top and then painted it in. And that way you get a variation of different types of yellow green. Okay, same thing with the blue greens. This blue green is very different from this blue green and this blue green. And that's because I'm using a mixture of these 4 colors to create all those variations of blue green. Okay, so don't think you have to be stuck with just one colored pencil for making one color. You can make different variations of that color by adding other little bits of tone to it so that it changes the overall tone of the color. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and start making a section. I think I'll do this one. And I'm going to make it blue-green. And I'm going to make it going from, I think I'll start it dark here and make it lighter up here. So I'm going to start it in the dark section. It's going to be dark here, and it's going to gradually fade to light. So I'm pressing pretty hard with the colored pencil, giving good pressure to get a good amount of color on there. But as I come forward, I'm going to start to lighten up my pressure. And it's going to get much lighter. I'll go really darken it more over here. So you can go over spaces more. And then when you get to the side where you want it to be light, just make sure you're using very small amount of pressure. I'm barely even touching it to the paper. Okay, there's an announcement on right now, so just ignore that. Okay, so see how I started with dark and then I gradually got to lighter? Now when you do the water, you have to do the opposite. When you do the water on top of that, you want to start in the light section first and move towards the dark. So I'm taking my water, and you can see the color is really light here as the colored pencil is activating. And then as I move forward this way, it's getting darker and darker and more saturated. And it's going to continue to do that into this corner where it's going to be the darkest. Okay, so now I've got a nice gradation of color from light to dark, and I can just clean my brush and get fresh water again and just clean up that transition. Any spots that look a little bumpy, just kind of clean it up a little bit. Now, one thing you have to remember, I went back over it again with the paintbrush, but I'm doing it very softly. You can't go over the same spot a ton of times with the paintbrush, and you can't press hard with the paintbrush. If you start to see that the paper is tearing and getting gunky and ruining the paper, you got to stop immediately, okay? Because if you use too much pressure or you go over one spot too much with the paintbrush, or say you need to like wipe up a mistake with the paper towel, if you rub the paper with a wet paintbrush or when it's already wet with the paper towel, you are going to ruin the paper. So be very careful. You are painting very softly with the paintbrush, and you're not going over one spot too many times. If you go over a spot too many times, it will ruin the paper, and then you'll get this area of your painting that looks all bumpy and torn, and the color will be uneven, okay? So please be careful to just use the paintbrush very softly and, not use it too much in one area, like for too long, okay? All right. And then let's see, I'll show you one more thing with the colored pencils, and then I'm going to show you some embellishment options for the end of the project when you're done. So let's see.
Attention all.
There's another announcement. Just ignore it.
Club is meeting in room 3315 at 12:30 p.m. Again, the Red Cross Club is meeting in room 3315 at 12:30 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is do a transition from one color to the other, like this one. I want the rest of I have yellow, purple, and red, orange on a little bit, but I want the majority of my picture to be blue, green, and yellow, green. So that's why I'm just continuing a lot of blue, green, and yellow, green throughout this whole midsection. So the rest of these spaces are going to be blue, green, and yellow, green. So right here, you can see there's a transition from blue, green into yellow, green. I'm going to do this one in the opposite way. I'm going to do this one from blue, green into yellow, green over here. So this is how I did it. I did this yellow green first, all over. So the whole thing in yellow green. Okay. Then I'm taking the yellow, and since the yellow green's on this side, I'm going to switch it over to this side for this one, make it opposite. So on this side, I'm putting yellow. And once I get to the middle, I am using less pressure. So I made it pretty solid yellow over here. I'm using less pressure and only a tiny bit of yellow over on the middle. Okay. Then I'm going to use this color. I'm going to put it on top of the green. This is a very blue green, so it's going to turn that yellow green into a much more blue green. I'm using it fairly hard pressure on this side, and then as I come to the middle, I'm lightening up the pressure so it's not as dark. And I'm not putting it over onto the yellow side. I'm just stopping it in the middle and pressing lightly, okay? So now I can start that gradation. I'm going to start with the yellow side, and you'll see I'm going to clean my brush in between sides. So I'm going to go like this all the way to the middle. I'm going to stop and clean my brush. And then I'm going to start from this edge for the blue-green. Come to the middle. And once I get to the middle, then I can mix the two colors to blend them. Okay, and there we go. So that's how you get a gradation from one color into another. Okay, and just remember not to rub that too much with the wet paintbrush because it will start to ruin the paper and you're not going to like what it looks like when you get bumpy, pulpy sections that looks like they've been rubbed off too much. So just be really careful with that. Okay, all right. Now I haven't finished yet, but the last thing that is going to be done with this project is called embellishment. Okay, so embellishment can be done with the Sharpies again, and also with dry colored pencil. So once all of this is dry, I only have 2 sections that are wet right now. So on the rest of this that's completely dry, I can start adding embellishment. I can embellish with the colored pencils and with the pens. So with the colored pencils, what I might want to do is to create some texture onto an area. So this is red orange, and then I added a little magenta to this side to make it a little different. So this is a light red orange. And what I can do is I can start, what do I want to do? Let's see. Maybe I'll make some stripes. I can start making stripes with the colored pencil, and I'm going to keep this dry. So it's not going to be painted. I'm going to have some solid stripes that are going to stay that way. Okay, so see that how that adds a little depth, it adds a little more texture, and I'm not putting paint over this now. Once you're done painting, and I know I'm not actually done painting, but for demonstration purposes, pretend I'm done painting, the whole thing's dry. You can use dry colored pencil to create actual lines and patterns and shapes in some of these areas. You can also do the same thing with the pen. Okay, so maybe I want to do that same idea, like maybe here. Okay, and I'm not going to do this to every single area, but if you pick certain areas throughout, or even like a squiggly line of the shapes throughout that have texture from pens and colored pencils in them, it's going to create a lot more visual interest. Okay, so once you're done with all the paint and everything's dry, then go in with pens and dry colored pencils, no more water, and add stripes, add patterns, add, little circles. So maybe one area could be filled with different size circles all over the place like this. Okay, so be creative and with your embellishment. Okay, so that's the last step of this project, is to add the embellishment. Okay, and this project is going to be due next week on Tuesday for this class. All right, that's it. Enjoy.